We're going to go to line 2. I believe Dan is on the line from Fort Charlotte, Florida. So,
Hey.
Hi, can you hear us?
Hi, how you doing?
Just fine. Thanks for calling.
Hey, am I coming through okay?
Yes, you're coming through just fine.
Okay. Well, I am a theist, and I'm here to kind of offer evidence for the case of God, but not necessarily to prove them.
Okay.
Okay.
So I did write a kind of thing to be, not maybe a page and a half. So I'd like to kind of read that.
Well, instead of reading from like a full verbatim thing you've done, can you just like focus on the very best points just so we can keep the flow going?
Well...
Or just like center on like the best bit first. Give us like the best bit first.
All right. Well, basically, the thesis, which is the question that I posed to Atheist, says that as a theist, I can recognize the magnificent beauty and divinity of nature. I can appreciate the beauty and subjectively experience God in a flower test. Just as equally, I can subjectively experience consciousness, but seemingly there's no essence for either. So why is it that atheists can accept the quality of consciousness and not God?
Well, why does consciousness presuppose a God? Or why is God a God necessary for consciousness?
I'm sorry?
Why do you link the two things? Why is one a necessary condition of understanding the other? Why would belief in a God be necessary in order to acknowledge and understand such a thing as consciousness?
Well, I'm guessing because, science, atheists use science as to kind of say that there is no God.
Well, I wouldn't know about that. I wouldn't put it that way. What I would say, what we might say is that we consider there to be a lack of compelling evidence for the existence of a God. Now, whether you want to, and I personally, I'm in agreement with Dawkins and some others that I think it is very much a scientific question. Some people say it's a question outside the realm of science. I say that if people are positing that a God is, for example, the reason why there is a universe, there is the world we live in, there is anything at all, then that becomes an origins question, and I think that's very much within the bounds of scientific inquiry. But generally speaking, it's not like you don't use science to say now we're going to use science to prove that X, Y, or Z we don't believe in, really.
Okay.
So
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying you can't use science to prove either right now. But I think that it can be proved.
But wait a minute. If you're making a testable claim, that very much becomes the realm of science. So if you claim that God did some specific act, and then we can come back and show that not only did there not have to be a God in order for that to occur, but here's the actual natural explanation for it, then you can use science to disprove a claim.
But here's the more that's true. But here I think is the more direct approach to what you're saying. I think, which is if you're calling us up and you're saying I want to present a line of evidence for the idea that a God exists. But then at the same time you want to tell us, well, you can't use science or the scientific method to prove it either way. Then, considering that we know that the scientific method is a process that works, right? It's a process of, you observe phenomena, you draw conclusions based on observations and experimentation, that sort of thing. Then my question to you is, what is the criteria you are using to determine that the claim a God exists is true and not false? What are the methods that you're applying? What are the standards that you're applying to determine the truth of that claim?
Well, that's sort of what I've been writing about.
Okay.
That there is a underlying nature to the aspect of reality that is the same definition that we give God.
So are you saying that that God is just another name for nature? Is it more like, are you offering, because that sounds like a pantheism.
Like a unified field that is intelligent.
Okay, now how do you determine that? How do you determine that exists and that thing is intelligent?
Well, classical physics draws a distinction between particles and energy. defined by the Copenhagen interpretation. And this understanding created the notion called wave-particle duality, which postulates that all matter exhibits both wave and particle properties. And this means that an atom only appears in its particular place because so an atom spread out all over the place, and so there are sides to look at.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Just pause it. Hold that thought, because you're feeding back a little bit. I don't know if you've got a television on nearby, or if you have an internet or some speaker going on, or maybe it's just something they need to do in the control room. I'm having a little trouble making out everything you're saying, but go ahead, keep going, and we'll work on it.
Okay.
So
I think the philosophical question here is, does consciousness create reality? And I know that's kind of in a New Age category.
Okay. No, I think I know what you're getting at. There are two possibilities here. There's primacy of existence and primacy of consciousness. And you're proposing primacy of consciousness. Is that it?
That's right.
Okay. Well, the problem, though, with that is that in order for that consciousness to receive the reality, to bring that reality into being, as it were, by being conscious of it, that consciousness would have to exist.
That's right.
So I don't see how you can get around primacy of existence, because a consciousness that does not exist cannot perceive a reality and thereby bring it into existence through its perception.
And that's right.
Unless that consciousness exists. So I don't see, I've never seen how primacy of consciousness can work.
Well, there's a lot of science that can't be worked out very easily. Just like quantum non-locality. Sure,
but what you do in those cases is you reserve judgment on the question at that point. I mean, if there's a thing, for example, a scientist will say, if we do not have adequate evidence for X hypothesis, we're not going to draw a conclusion about that hypothesis yet. We're going to continue studying. So I think the best you can do, from at least the line of argument that I think you're trying to take here, is an inconclusive result.
Well, I got something here that I would like to offer.
Okay.
Which kind of puts consciousness in the unified field. And so basically, this is work by Stuart Campbell. And he says that within the synaptic cleft, there are these microtubules, which are like mini computers processing information on a molecular level. And that within that, the consciousness or the Bing effect occurs when superpositioning takes place. And that Bing effect is consciously floating around in different places of our brain. So an example of a directly observable effect of superposition is the interference piece from an electron wave in a double slit experiment. I don't know if you've heard of Schrodinger's cat.
Mm-hmm. But again, I still don't see how this precludes existence, right? I mean, again, for this consciousness to do anything, and pitch in here if anything I'm saying is not, I mean, if you can add, it just, in order for this, the consciousness that you propose to make these observations, it must exist.
Right. And
so you've got primacy of existence in pretty much any case. I mean, even if a consciousness is such that by observing, and I think, and this is a solipsistic argument, which I don't really, think it has a lot of, of value to begin with. But just for the sake of the argument, even if a consciousness has the ability to create a specific reality by observing it, by bringing it into being, by, the observation, managing to,
well, no. I think that's
split the difference between particle and wave or what have you. It would still have to exist first. There would have to be a state of existence in play in order for it to do that. So, yeah.
Well, that's part of the wave-particle duality, is that, everything is a wave first.
But then, but then wouldn't that apply to this cosmic consciousness, a.k.a. God, that you're referring to? And if so, then who observes it in order to bring it into its, state of existence so that it can then go on and create universes.
Right. Well, there's infinite parallel universes, and that you're stuck in a wave of possibilities. And once consciousness exists, then materialization occurs.
Yeah.
Consciousness exists, then materialization occurs. So consciousness can occur without a brain?
Well, it isn't until the possibilities that allow for a brain to exist can occur.
Right, but if the consciousness must exist, then existence must exist in order for the consciousness to exist.
Right, and that goes back to how do you get nothing out of something? I mean, how do you get something out of nothing, rather?
No, I don't think it does.
No,
I'm not quite sold on it. I mean, I see what you're trying to do, but I don't see any way that you are able to get around existence existing, needing to exist, the necessity of existence. Existence itself being what you might call the causal primary. Existence must exist in order for these consciousnesses, whether they are, one God from one universe or multiple gods from multiple parallel universes or what have you, in order for them to exist, for them to be able to then go on and do the observing that they do, to affect waves and particles in the way that they do, it all comes back to existence must exist first in order for them to exist to do everything with it. So I don't quite think, a valiant effort, but I don't think you're quite selling it.
Hey, Dan, are you the guy that emailed us asking us for the top 10 reasons we don't believe in a God?
No.
Okay.
No, okay.
All right.
Different Dan. Okay.
So, that's kind of where I am with all this. And Jen, I don't know, anything to pitch in?
No, I'm not sold.
Well, the thing is that, science is just showing this, actually. I mean, this is not something that is not being discovered. This is something that is being understood by the higher level aspects of, quantum physics.
Well, let me ask you this. If you think that the science that you're telling us about here is so compelling, that this has such compelling evidence for the existence of a God, why is it that physicists are among the least likely scientists to be believers?
Well, the thing is that yes, there are a lot of good physicists out there, and I don't take anything away from them, but you got, like, for example, all the best scientists who provide us the most in-depth understanding of the real world are the ones that actually believe in God.
Oh, I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can say that at all.
Cool.
I mean, I think that's. I think now you're just trying to make things up. I mean, there are a great many scientists out there who are indifferent to the notion of a God, who are unbelievers. Some are believers, but they don't think that the question of a God's existence enters into the particular line of work they do. But you simply cannot. You are now at the point of simply coming up and just pulling things out of your hat in order to sort of score some style points, debate points with us, and that's really not.
What I'm trying to show is that there are two sides of the coin.
Well, there may very well be, but you can't just go along and say, well, because now what you're doing is you're making a couple of fallacies. You're doing the appeal to authority plus the appeal to popularity. You're saying that not only do scientists believe in God, but then most scientists believe in God. So now you're just trying to sort of bull us over with the numbers.
Not only that, but the ones that believe in God are making the most contribution, which is not true, because more than 90% of the members of the National Academy of Sciences are, in fact, non-believers. Yeah. So, if you want to make that claim, then you got to deal with that.
And it's ultimately irrelevant. So it's unwise to bring fallacy into your argument.
It is really irrelevant. And my question really was about, you've got a group of people who... Stop.
Hang on.
My point here was that you've got a group of scientists who are the people closest to the data, who understand it the best, and who don't believe it points to a God. Yeah. So that's the hurdle you have to deal with if you want to use this information to support a claim that a God exists.
And there's another one that I think is really interesting, too, which is that when we get and we get a lot of calls from theists like yourself who either try to use these arguments from quantum mechanics, or they will use complex logical proofs to try to propose a God. One thing that I have found that's always interesting is I've met very, very few rank-and-file Christians, whether I'm talking about my parents or their friends or just people who go to church every Sunday, whose reason for believing in God and believing that Jesus is the Son of God and for being Christian and for believing that by dedicating themselves, confessing Jesus as their Savior, they're going to heaven. All of these standard beliefs that the vast majority of our Christian culture does believe as core tenets of the religion, none of them came to these beliefs through these arguments or through these tortuous, through transcendental argument for God, or through trying to understand God as some sort of cosmic consciousness, influencing the universe at a quantum level or anything like that. These are never the reasons you actually hear believers say, "This is why I am Christian." And so I find it very interesting that we get these arguments quite frequently, and I'm wondering if it's just to do with if these are sort of arguments that were kind of created after the fact in order to appeal to scientifically minded non-believers. And I'm much more interested in simply hearing from Christians, just from everyday Sunday go-to-meeting Christians, why they believe in God.
Those are the fundamentalists.
Not even fundamentalists.
No, they're not.
My parents aren't fundamentalists. They're not hardcore right-wing, Tea Party Christians by a long shot. But
they
do
don't
believe
offer that strong of an argument.
Well,
from a theist perspective, when you think about natural world, you wonder about God.
But it's enough for them, and it's enough for most Christians. And so what I'm interested in knowing, Dan, is if you are Christian, why are you Christian?
Well,
what converted you?
I moved to Christianity. I was raised in a Christian family.
So you were raised in a Christian culture, in a Christian family, like most of us were. I was raised Christian. So your main reason for being Christian is simply that you were raised into it.
I'm not claiming to be Christian. I have my own kind of belief about it, and which is kind of unique. And I don't think that I fall to the general category of Christians.
Okay, so then, do you believe Jesus was the Son of God?
I do believe that.
Do you believe that Jesus was resurrected from the dead after spending 3 days on the cross? Which is what today's big holiday is all about?
Yes, I think that's true.
Okay, well, that seems to make you a fairly conventional Christian in that regard. I mean, as I understand, in order to be a Christian, in order to properly hold that mantle, you need to believe in God. You need to believe that Jesus was His Son sent down to earth to be sacrificed for our sins, and that once He was sacrificed, He was raised from the dead. So you sound to me...
But it's the perspective of God that is different. And I think the universe is, in a sense, Godian, quote unquote, and that was the need to have someone to represent the deity.
Okay, so then God is essentially a projection of mankind's upon the universe. God is humanity's. This is my thought. God is humanity's projected self-image upon the universe as a whole. It's our way of understanding the universe by putting a human face on the universe. We look at the universe and we say, this makes sense as a cosmic intelligence. When we put a human face on it, it becomes easier to relate to. It becomes not such a big, scary place, empty vacuum anymore. It's a place that's made for us, that's welcoming to us.
And I believe that it's a kind of co-creating process that, how do I articulate this? We offer our beliefs to consciousness, to the way that the world, the universe is, that this God somehow materialized out of nothing because He's omnipresent, everything, omni-X, Y, Z.
Okay.
That is reason that He exists.
He exists because, let me make sure I'm very clear on what you're saying here. He exists because He was brought into existence.
In the future. But He exists throughout everything.
Right, but
that's just my personal belief on it.
No, but I think it sounded to me a lot like what you were saying was that people, theists, Christians, people who believe in God was brought into existence by their belief. That sounded a lot like what you were just saying.
Well, it says in Genesis...
No. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Because you talked about... Yeah, okay, so you talked about a co-creating process.
Yes, God and humans are kind of independent on each other.
Okay, so then human beings created God by virtue of their belief in the image of humanity.
Right.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see, who is next?